Hello and welcome to the Play Creators Conference, part of a series of events by Mojo Nation, and thank you for joining us for the Toys in Troubled Times panel. My name is Simon Skelton from Big Ideas, and with me today I have Adam Hocherman, the Vice President of New Business from PlayMonster, David Winter, Director of Inventor Relations at PlayMonster, and Hayley Woodward, Head of Global Markets at Rubik's. Thank you all for joining us from your beautiful and wonderful locations in lockdown or semi-lockdown. And that's part of the reason we're here. So there's a series of questions. I'll go to each of you in turn. And the first one to Hayley, please. What's been the biggest single disruption to your day-to-day life, working life due to lockdown, and how have you overcome it or tried to overcome it? So to Hayley, please.
Fortunately, it's Rubik's 40th birthday anniversary this year. So we had so many events planned, which obviously had to be put on hold. And so we had to really quickly redirect everything online and virtual events and still get people excited about the Cube. Fortunately, we have a great social media manager, Perry, and he very quickly redirected, all of our marketing efforts online. We've done some great influencer programs, which have been very successful. We started a hashtag Cube at Home challenge beginning of March, and we've had nearly 20 million views on that hashtag sort of over lockdown, which has been amazing. And we've really seen people they're having that time on their hands, so they're picking up a cube, they're wanting to solve it more than ever. So we've been very fortunate. So we've had that, and we've done some virtual events, and they've worked really well. And I think we're seeing influencers just really kind of taking on now that platform. We started an ambassador program before lockdown, but that's really kind of moved quickly now. We're using all of our ambassadors to talk about the Cube and create content for us, and that's worked brilliantly. TikTok especially. Instagram, it's all just grown rapidly in lockdown. So thank God for social media.
That's good. Thank you, Hayley. David, to you, please. Same question. The biggest disruption, and what have you done to overcome it or try to overcome it?
Biggest disruption in my personal life, my work life, I'd have to say just missing the office for sure. It's been a struggle not being around my colleagues and being around all the creative energy that is just by nature being around a lot of creative people. So I definitely miss office life and what that does to my day-to-day creativity. And as I was telling the group before we jumped on record, that another big disruption is just, having limited space. People, designers, I bet especially, we're just used to smaller spaces and using those creatively. So I've had to endure, my one-bedroom flat in Toronto for the last 3 months, and finally it got to the breaking point where I had to get out of town and take refuge out in the countryside. So I imagine for families with kids or people with pets, being home all the time is very disruptive. So whatever we can do to mitigate that and try to work through it, it's been a challenge, but have had fun coming up with creative solutions.
Thank you. Adam, your thoughts on that, please. Your biggest disruption and how you have tried or how you have overcome it.
From a company standpoint, we've fortunately had a pretty seamless time moving to a virtual environment. I'd say that the biggest disruption from a company standpoint was largely in the warehouse, and that those were essential services that to us that did not stop, and we had to deal with that. From a personal standpoint and how it affects my role in Inventor Relations, David alluded to it. I have 2 young children. Sorry, 1 second. I have 2 young children, ages 6 and 8, and fortunately we did actually send them to summer camp, but that's going to end in a week, and so before and after that, it's caused some time constraints, time that I would otherwise have in the evening for catch up and things. It's just caused a large amount of focus necessary to get everything done that's required in a day. So personal and work related time kind of overlaps a lot these days.
That's the problem, I think, as well. And I think working across different time zones hasn't made it easier. And I think different effects of the coronavirus in different countries. So we're all at different stages, which I think has made it harder too. Would you all agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. Although I will say staying at the office till 8 or 9 to Zoom with Tokyo is a lot better doing it from home. You get dinner whipped up and ready to go, and then you're like, oh, I got a Zoom to join. So it's not been so bad doing those international Zoom calls.
I think people have been more relaxed. I think we've understood each other's situation a little better, and it's still professional, but it's less business-like, I think, which has been nice.
Yeah, I agree. You see a window into somebody's home environment, and that does kind of let the guard down a little bit.
Yes, we've all done more tidying up.
Yes, I was about to say. And it's lovely seeing all of the kids as well. I think at the beginning, it was so awful having a 3-year-old running in on a really important call, but everyone's in the same boat, and it's been quite nice.
I think
a little bit of more of a human element to all the business that you do. There's people doing this job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think so. And it'd be interesting to know from a consumer point of view how they've reacted, because we've seen all the facts and figures that suddenly they've been playing games at home with their children, and games figures have gone up, and puzzle figures and sales of Rubik's, as Hayley has touched on, have been a great example of that. But with certain categories doing well, has there been anything within that you've looked at and said, okay, that gives me an inkling on how to change my strategy in terms of products you're looking for, either products internally for internal R&D or externally with Inventors? So what's happened that maybe has changed your thinking over the last few months from consumer point of view? And for that, I will go to you first, please, Adam.
Sure. We had some serendipity with this, in that, the categories that are doing the best, as you've all heard, are games, crafts, activities, and puzzles. We're in all three of them, the first two more than puzzles. And so, luckily that, with our acquisition of Cahoots late last year, we found ourselves both more interested in a particular category anyway, and then it turned out to be one of the categories that was of great interest. So from an Inventor submission standpoint, I've spent more time looking at the categories that are, that are hotter at the moment. Puzzles in particular, we saw a submission recently that was a hybrid, puzzle game concept, neat concept anyway, but it caught my eye because, hey, puzzles are hot. Maybe this is something we should look a little harder at.
Thank you. David, to you, please. What have you seen in the sort of consumer landscape that may have changed your strategy and what you're looking for?
Truth be told, we've always had a very diverse portfolio and look for innovation across the board. But I will say there's definitely been some ticks in different boxes, like outdoor activities, like Adam said. Outdoor is a big one because families are spending more time together outside in their backyard than ever before. So my eye is definitely onto outdoor games and backyard fun. In and out of the pool. So I think when I'm looking at stuff, I'm always looking for the day-to-day, but for folks that didn't necessarily think of outdoor as a big category, I'm looking for a big win in that space for sure.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, David. I think outdoor is slightly unfair on Hayley and I, because being based in the UK, yes, we have glorious weather today, but outdoor is often difficult for us in terms of play. But Hayley, from your point of view, from what consumers are doing, not just playing with the Rubik's Cube, but perhaps looking at what consumers as retailers are doing as well, have you noticed any change in terms of consumer attitudes or retailer attitudes in terms of what they're asking you for now?
I mean, online, obviously, I think online is where we've seen the majority of our sales. And this is similar to all of the marketing campaigns we had for the anniversary. We'd geared up so much to have so much in-store and point of sale and online activity, and we've had to very quickly change that. So we had put forward this ambassador program, so we've got some great content, even though studios are locked down and we can't get great video content right now. Our user-generated content that our ambassadors and influencers are producing. We're still churning out content to put on socials and to online retailers, and we're helping, to some key retailers to fund that, and we're using our global social channels to drive traffic to their online Walmart and online Target, that kind of thing. So I think we just have to do a lot more with online, but also with new product. Rubik's, we're looking kind of outside the cube anyway, and what can we do. We've had a big success in games in the last year, so I think it's just, we can go, and I think Rubik's are being, now that we've had this huge brand awareness opportunity and people are seeing that we have got more from Rubik's, we are open to other ideas and other categories as well. So yeah.
That's interesting, thank you. And it's interesting to hear from the three of you the positives. There haven't really been that many negatives coming out of it. Yes, we've had warehouse issues, and yes, we've had sort of the problem of not meeting with people in the office, but it's nice to hear good things come out of it. And I think sometimes consumers forget how long it takes you guys to get a product from concept to manufacture and on the shelf. So even though we've had lockdown for 3-4 months, however it's 5 months, however long it's been, that's not very long in the development cycle that you guys are faced with. So that brings me on to the next question, please. In terms of the environment at the moment, is now a good time to launch a new product, knowing how difficult it is to get things onto the shelves and knowing that our consumers could be in a different situation by the time you do get a product onto shelf? So is now a good time to launch a new product? And Hayley, to you, please.
So I think the impulse products is definitely, I think that will be affected, because I think even me with a young child myself, I would still go out to the store now, but I wouldn't bring her. So I'm not going to be nagged to pick up this $5 piece, small item. So I think there's more considered purchases, but I think because of online, we can go after the, a bit more expensive price points. An area is how, using apps and connecting. How can we get a Rubik's product to connect with an app or something like that? I think that we're going to have to, again, think differently about kind of what products we're looking at, and I think that's going to be the big change.
Yes, thank you. David, to you, what are your thoughts in terms of the timing now for launching a new product, please?
Well, it's kind of been thrust upon us a little bit because we didn't have time so much to prepare for the fall 20, launch of new product, that we've had a lot of teams think very quickly on their feet on how we're going to interface with the customer in this new world environment. So our traditional customer touch points are now curbside. Their time spent in store is very focused and limited. So we're making sure that when we do have the customer's attention, we're delivering the message very succinctly, very effectively. And there's been a lot of work on the packaging side, our trade marketing side, and our digital media component to make sure that we're making the most out of the current circumstances. So it's going to be interesting, something to watch, and we're going to learn a lot from fall 20 and how we're going to implement that into 21 and spring and fall. But we are pushing forward. We got fall 22 on the horizon for development, so we are not going to skip a beat.
Thank you. And Adam, from your point of view, what's PlayMonster's view in terms of timing for launching a new product? And I know it's something you look at all year round anyway, but just bearing, I suppose, in mind that you do go cross countries, cross territories, and cross boundaries in terms of where coronavirus is and isn't hitting. What's your view on the timing, please?
I don't have a lot more to add from what Hayley and David said. We're looking at fall 2022 or spring 2022. We work pretty far out. I think, now's as good a time as any to be bringing new concept to us. It is a long time horizon. Hopefully we'll be clear of a lot of this, but the reality is that, to the extent that the world was, lucky that this happened when it happened. I mean, even 5-7 years ago, could we be having this kind of seamless Zoom communication? Even, Amazon, I mean, it was there, but it's had so much adoption, even in that period of time. So not so much has changed. The retail outlets perhaps have changed, but the product categories are still there, and business continues as usual.
That's true. Thank you. One thing we've noticed, this was on a call with some production companies a week or so ago, and this never occurred to me. But during lockdown in the UK, they were saying that they had trouble getting licenses from the government for children to appear in adverts and television productions. So it had really curtailed what they could do, especially in terms of online promotion. And that was something that hadn't occurred to me. So from a sort of a North America point of view, David and Adam, is that something you two have noticed? So Adam, back to you first, please.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I mean, we just did a couple of commercial shoots within the last couple of weeks, and there were children involved, and there were protocols and masks and other things involved other than, during the actual shoots. And I wasn't actually present, but I assume the way that the shots were set up considered social distancing and other safety considerations. But again, that should all be transparent and fairly invisible to the consumer.
Oh, sorry, David, similar from your side.
It's interesting, as we did our fall 21 sales summit, all of our presentations would have, TVCs or sizzles with kids. And this year it's been more product focused than ever. So yeah, we are definitely taking the considerations into play. But for exactly as Adam said, the consumer, it is invisible. And for us, we're chugging along as business as usual as best we can. And without the kids, we'll get them in next year.
Thank you. Hayley, from your point of view, from any sort of Rubik's promotion, have you noticed any difficulties in terms of being able to get hold of kids or licensing for promotion?
Yeah, we've just tried to have a photo shoot, and we can get kids, but there's so much protocols, and when you're trying to do it on smaller budgets, it's difficult. And so getting the older models, because they have to have chaperones there, obviously, if they're younger, there's less space, feeding them for the day and things like that. There's so much to think about, more than logistic-wise that you would have before. I think we're really, as I've mentioned, pushing the user-generated content side of things, and people having it in their own homes and just creating some great content that's really natural and organic. I think that's the road we're going down, and it's working. So I think we'll stick with that as well. So it's another positive.
Adapting. Thank you.
Adapting.
I think we all are, and I think the consumer is too. And Adam, you touched on it in terms of how we've used Zoom and various other ways to communicate, which I think we've struggled with at the start because of bandwidth, and certain times of the day are harder than others. So I think we've adapted okay. We're all still online now. But has lockdown altered your engagement with, I suppose, inventors and buyers? So I suppose, Hayley, to you first, please. So how has lockdown changed what you're doing with inventors and retailers, and what are the pros and cons from your side? What do you love and hate about it?
Yeah. So retailers is less of an issue for us, because obviously we have licensees and distributors globally, so they're having their own issues there. In the inventor side, but we're still talking to licensees probably more than we did before, because we can just get on a Zoom call, and as David said earlier, you're indoors, so if you need to talk to the West Coast, and you don't have to sit in the office and wait around. So licensee engagement hasn't changed. In terms of inventors, we normally take and ask for pitches over video and send their videos in first anyway. So again, that hasn't changed, and yeah, I think we will still have the Mojo event, and even Shy Taggets will be virtual, and it will be very different, and we're hoping for good videos. I think that's going to be very important, but yeah, I think it won't affect the volume of who we speak to and how many inventors we speak to.
Okay, thank you. I think it's persuading inventors to do shorter videos as well. So David, over to you, please. How's lockdown affected your engagement with inventors, and what's been good and bad?
I'd say engagement, I think across the board, engagement is at an all-time high for anyone working from home. Like it's just created this work environment where you're just constantly at your computer from 8 to 6 or whatever, if you keep crazy hours. But I think inventors have also taken to, they've got the time, they've got the bandwidth to keep pumping out product, and they're just as quick to set up a Zoom call than they ever were before. And I think it's awesome for us, actually, because I think I've had more meetings at this point of the year than I ever would at all the toy fairs combined. It's exhausting, but it's cool when you just keep getting wowed. So it's not been so challenging. It's just been a steady pace. And I'm looking forward to some holiday, maybe towards the end of August.
No, that's good. Steady pace is a good answer, because Toy Fair time, it's not like that. I mean, Adam, I'm sure you're going to say the same thing. It goes from here to here, doesn't it? Has it settled more for you, and have there been good and bad points?
Yes. I mean, when you say has it settled, you mean has the sort of the new normal settled? Yeah. I mean, it's gotten easier, especially when school got out. I mean, that was a major sigh of relief. And frankly, we have quite a bit of anxiety in my family about what's going to happen in September. We're supposed to hear about that as early as today. But settling into the groove in the summer definitely was easier. And again, we do a lot of stuff asynchronously as well. So we take pitch videos first, and I review that, and then we'll set up meetings after the fact. So not that much has changed. I mean, it's almost been, I think a lot of this would have been happening anyway. So it's certainly been accelerated, but the way that we've been conducting business has certainly been evolving in this direction anyway. In a way, being able to rifle through Zoom calls there's a certain degree of efficiency that you're reading about in the news, that you're not wasting that time walking between meetings and the pre and post chatter, and we miss that, as David mentioned, the office banter. But on the other hand, it's very efficient.
Yes, I would agree with you. I think where we've found it interesting from a presenting point of view is juggling between different software. So some people prefer Zoom, some people want to use Microsoft Teams, some want to use LiveWire. So juggling between the different platforms has not been the easiest, because we found Zoom is the best. It takes the lowest bandwidth, it's the most flexible, there's less buttons to click. So I think that bit has been easier. So to each of the three of you, has Zoom been this isn't an advert, but has Zoom been your preferred route? So Adam, back to you first, please.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. It definitely has. And I think I'll hold my tongue there. It is by far and away the easiest platform to use.
Okay, David?
Yeah, no doubt. Zoom was getting set up in our office before COVID hit. So sorry, my French, there's a French dialect around here, the COVID. Zoom was at the forefront for us before it happened, which is cool, because as soon as it, exploded, we were just ready to rock and roll. So I love Zoom, but I miss the in-person. I definitely miss that in-person magic.
That's true. Hayley, what about you? Are you a Zoom fan, and has the transition been good and smooth for you?
Yeah, once you've got the children, you've got used to the children kind of on the Zoom calls as well. That's the only sort of thing. But that was very easy, and definitely Zoom was the preferred. Not a fan of Skype, but yeah. But no, it's been fine. I think, as David said earlier as well, you just, the days seem to be longer. You're having more video calls, and probably normally what you just pick up a phone for a quick call, you're just now having a conversation and speaking to someone over Zoom. So it's great.
Yeah, everything's on the half hour now, and your day used to be I got a phone call to ask you a quick question, but now it's a 30-minute block of time that starts with how you doing, how's COVID if you're not in the same place, and then maybe 10 minutes of actual work time, work call.
But that's good. I mean, it's about people. And I think as well, it's with us, certainly with us with factories, it's made it easier to jump on a call and go, what about this? What about that? And see something. Whereas I think a lot of the time we found people will send an email with some photographs, whereas actually just jumping on a call and having someone show you has made it a lot quicker and more collaborative, I think. So if only we'd had a crystal ball to be able to predict all of that, we may have done this 2 years ago, perhaps, and moved down this route. So, crystal ball wise, seeing as Mr. Winter said that they were already moving down the Zoom route properly before COVID. So, crystal ball question to you, please, sir. How do you see the pandemic changing the toy industry moving forward? That's a really broad question. You can answer that as you want. And by toys, I mean toys and games, how you deal with retailers. We've touched on inventors, but how do you see it changing going forward, please?
You know, if I had a crystal ball, I'd be definitely looking for the Powerball numbers. But I guess as it relates to toys, you know, I think you're going to see a lot of trend insights. As soon as COVID hit, toilet paper was the de facto thing that everyone was talking about. And I wouldn't be surprised if you saw toys and games or puzzles that picked up on a lot of the more popular things that have come out of COVID, like TP, like sanitizer, like, masks. I've actually seen some concepts in that space already. So I wouldn't be surprised if something came out down the road trendy like that.
So is that an insight? So really Spin Master's looking for a game with sanitizer, masks, and toilet paper?
Definitely, I would say probably not.
Okay.
Trends come and go, eh? So I would more look for the things that will stick around for the long term. And I hope this goes away. I hope there's an end to this at some point.
Yeah, we missed the contact. Okay, so over to you, Adam, please. So if you had a crystal ball, what would you say would be the changes that you see shaping the toy and games industry going forward, please?
I mean, as a company, we've been very forthright about saying that we don't have a crystal ball, and that the fourth quarter, which we all know is so important to our industry, is very unpredictable. And there's two schools of thought. People have sort of pre-bought and maybe will be light in the end of the year, or the contrary is that there's been a renaissance of introduction of, hey, this is fun and I want more of this come Christmas, and there's always a Christmas. Clearly, look, online has been barreling forward for a long time, but this is just yet another example of why retail is going to continue to move online in many ways. New channels, new attention to these channels for companies that are maybe more brick and mortar based. But none of that is new news. It's just brought to the forefront by the current situation.
Yes, I think so. And Hayley, if you could build a crystal ball into a Rubik's Cube, how would you see the pandemic changing the industry going forward? You've touched on some of it with how Rubik's has capitalized and adapted on certain things, but going further forward, 2, 3, 5 years, what do you think might happen?
Not much more to add than what Adam and David said. I think parents and families have seen the real importance of games, and I think it's always been there, but I think it's been highlighted especially, and I think that will continue, and I think people will be willing to spend that little bit more, and I think there'll be more considered purchases, and definitely the online element. I think it was all on everyone's radar, but just now it's just how do you adapt quicker and have that content and put online. And I think the big thing, especially for Rubik's, is with fakes and counterfeit products. I think that's a worry. I think it opens the door a bit more for that, I think. So we'll be really looking at that and how to stand out amongst our counterfeit products. I'd say that was the negative for being big online focus. But we have the branding and the iconicness of the cube behind us, so the brand.
Yes, thank you. I mean, you've all touched on online and you've all mentioned Q4. Do you think we might see a change in shift away from the emphasis on quarter 4 or quarter 3 to quarter 4? Do you think we might see sales gently start to spread out throughout the year as people spend their money differently and not just focus on the big holidays? Hayley, back to you first, please.
Yes, I mean, Rubik still has a Q4, of course, has a big impact, but we are, a lower priced item, and so we have got that impulse purchase. And at the moment, there isn't that impulse purchase, and I think that will stay for a while longer. So yes, I do think in ways it will spread out. Yes, I do.
I suppose I was being hopeful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Adam, back to you on that one, please.
That's a really interesting question that I hadn't considered before. I think to reframe the question, what you're asking is, will the seasonality of our industry begin to flatten out a little bit? I guess I'll take the counterpoint. I don't think so. I mean, I think that, you know, we're always looking for counterpoints to the seasonality. You know, Spin acquired a water company for that reason, probably, or part of it. David could confirm. You know, so that spring becomes more of a spike than maybe it was previously. But the problem is that, you know, consumers are pretty well set in their ways. There's going to be a Thanksgiving, there's going to be a Christmas, and you know, that's where the buying is focused. You still only have one birthday a year. So a lot of these things don't change on account of this idea that, you know, we don't necessarily have to do all of our spending in the fourth quarter.
Okay, thank you. David, your thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, I think Hayley and Adam touched on it brilliantly. I think just depending on the type of company and how spread out your portfolio is, you know, we've always been pretty diverse, and spring has always been a focus for us. So, you know, Christmas will always be, and the holidays around December are always going to be a major selling point for us. But yeah, it would be great to increase sales in the other months, and I think the product that's selling right now very well just shows that these are the areas that we could help focus on and grow. Yep.
It takes a big change, doesn't it? It does. It really does. Thank you. In terms of creativity, because I suppose we need to get creative in terms of sales as well as products. So we've touched on sales a little bit in terms of how that might change. In terms of your creativity, has lockdown impacted your creativity, and if so, for better or worse? So David, we'll go to you first on this one, please.
I've seen people become so creative in this time, and I really celebrate creativity. So, you know, I definitely have had to hone in on what makes something special, like in a meeting where you're only seeing something digitally, you don't get to play with it, and the tactility and the experience of something in person is gone. You definitely have to be paying more attention and looking for the moments and the magic that maybe aren't being translated as well through video, but there's still something there. So I've definitely had to hone in on my skills of looking for product and what makes product impactful for, you know, potential consumers. So that's way I've definitely improved and have you know, try to grow that skill set.
Okay, thank you. Hayley, to you, has creativity in lockdown got better or worse? How's it affected you?
I think the Rubik's team, we've had a few, you know, brainstorming meetings, and we're still planning 40th anniversary events and hopeful for the back end of the year. But it's as much as Zoom is great, and we've highlighted the positives, there's also, I think there's a few that when you're in a room and you're buzzing and you're bouncing off other people's ideas, you may not, everyone's talking over each other on Zoom, and you know, you have that, and so you might not say something that you would have if you're in a room, and that's very different when you're having that creative day and working with sort of agencies and things. I have found that difficult. Yeah, it's been tough, and I think you need that to have people around you, especially when you're doing brainstorming sessions and things like that. It's not the same on Zoom at all.
No, thank you. I mean, Zoom doesn't capture the chemistry that you feel in a room, or the magic of someone picking up a product and playing with it. I mean, Adam, same question to you from your point of view, from overseeing a vast product range that covers a variety of different areas and ages. How would you say lockdown has impacted your creativity for good or bad over the last few months?
Well, interestingly, as a company, you know, we now have a creative department in Michigan and in the UK, and it's actually served to bring those three groups together, as well as our core product development team, which is in Beloit, Wisconsin. You know, related to creativity, we had a bunch of conversations early on about how Inventor Concepts might try to leverage the new remote universe and the Zoom platform, and like that seemed to sort of quickly fade away, and I haven't seen that much kind of capitalizing on that thinking down the road that this may be something that lasts for a very, very long time. And I hope that's sort of the general optimism. From a personal standpoint, I mean, I've taken some pitches now over Tabletop Simulator. Don't love it, but it's a decent substitute for, you know, for in person. Something I've done in my personal time is escape room games in particular play really well over Zoom if both parties have a copy of the game. So that was a lot of fun. So, you know, there are ways that inventors may be sort of changing the way that they think about what they're developing in order to leverage, you know, an environment that may not be here for a long time, but maybe it will.
That's it. We just don't know, do we? We really don't. Well, I think what you've gone through today has been very insightful from a sort of east-west point of view and from different company sizes and product lines point of view. And I think it's been really helpful. It's been great for me to talk to you, to hear your comments. I'm sure the people watching the Mojo event and listening to this will take something away from it as well. So I'd just like to say thank you all for your time, for your input, for your comments, and for being part of the Mojo Nation event. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Simon.
Thanks.
Thank you, Billy and Simon. Thank you so much.